My name is Bradley Babb. I'm from Barbados originally. I moved to America in 96, 97, and I got opportunity.
You sure is that far? That was much earlier than that,
No,
man.
96, 97 is when I actually was here, because 95 is when the gentleman from Bike Magazine came down and did an article on myself and a couple other people for mountain bike racing. And that's how I got from Barbados to Durango, Colorado. And then when I got to Durango, Colorado, one thing led to the next. I started meeting farmers who was producing vegetables and herbs and stuff like that. And then some of them had their medical license and they were also producing medical cannabis also. Fast forward a little bit, I moved out of Colorado, moved to New Mexico, and then I got introduced to permaculture. And permaculture is basically, we could call it the science, but it's basically using the five kingdoms of nature, the five predominant kingdoms of nature, which is plants, animals, algae, bacteria, and fungus, and using those as an example of how we tailor our relationships with our spouses, our children, with our community, and how we set up our businesses and how we even develop communities. So learning permaculture, it's really given me a keen eye on how to look at things from multiple angles. And it's also taught me to read patterns. So I'm very much into reading patterns, and that's how I'm able to identify what we can use to help solve some of these, if one would say, issues or produce solutions to move forward, to help re-educate the people on the knowledge that's inside of them, and just reminding them like, hey, we have the ability to do for self, because we've been engineered to not trust each other and not work together. But the same people that's engineered us to do that, they're all working together. We say we can't trust nobody, yet we get in a plane and we don't even know the pilot, and the pilot's flying us. But yet we say we don't trust nobody. So we have to look at this thing at a broader scope, bigger than race and class and sex and all that, and look at it from a real human level, because it doesn't matter where we are in the world. If something goes off over there, it's going to affect us here. So we have to stop thinking that we're separate, because I was told if we remove all the space in between all the matter, it could fit into all the matter could fit into a cube that was like 4 by 4. So for me, I've been really trying to inspire people to do better for themselves, because the biggest part of any journey is the first step. I'm working with a group of people in St. Vincent. They have medical cannabis there, and they are always asking me for supplies and stuff like that. And not that I don't want to give them, but what we are finding is most of the raw materials that comes over here and get processed, it actually comes from where we are from. So it's just really educating people on knowing what to identify and how to use the resources that they have in front of them. So for me, I'm very passionate about helping people, educating people, farming. I love to grow cannabis. I love growing food, and I love educating and sharing. And I love to feed people too, because I noticed that when you feed people, sometimes we don't even remember it, but years later, that person has come back and be like, hey, you fed me when I was on my last and I was ready to give up, and you were the only person that turned and helped me. So we have to make an impact on a grand scale. And they say that if we want to clean up the world, we have to clean up our world first. So it's really getting
That's right.
people to realize, let's work together. Let's stop the unnecessary competition, because look, everybody competitive and everybody's tired. All this competition, everybody's tired. So we have to figure out how to get off of this lower level vibration and come up to more unity. And since we're children, we're hearing about unity. We have to figure out what your strengths are, what mines are, what our family, different people. And in permaculture, it taught me to put certain groups of people together according to their strengths. Because I own a business, I don't need to do everything in the business. Maybe I'm the one that's like
That's right.
producing the food. There's somebody else doing the accounting. There's somebody else actually processing this. There's somebody else cleaning the food. And then there's somebody going to the market to create the sales with the different vendors and stuff like that. So because we live in a society that has been perpetrated upon us, that I gotta be the boss and everybody wants to be the boss. And that makes a lot of big headedness and we don't get nowhere. And I don't always have to lead. I don't. Matter of fact, sometimes I don't want to lead. I want other people to lead. That way I can see their perspective rather than everybody just looking at my perspective. And that's how we'll encourage each other.
A lot of the stuff that you say is very deep. Um, I think it's very intriguing. I think a lot of times people don't always want to hear some of the things that other people have to say. For example, you said like people are asking for material for you, to send some material or whatever, right? And what you guys are finding is that a lot of the material is already there in places like you mentioned, St. Vincent. I don't know if you're working with other islands or if that's the predominant one that you got that
That's the
connection with.
first one I
Maybe
started.
they're more accessible.
Yeah.
Okay. Are they a lot more accessible? They're willing to work with you down
Yes, they
there?
are. They really are. And I feel very, I don't even know if honored is the word. I feel very excited, almost like a kid in a candy store, if you want to put it in those terms, because when I showed up and I had all this information in literature, and the same thing happened in Barbados, and my hat is off to people in Barbados for that too. That when I showed up, I was a little hesitant because I didn't know how it was going to be received. But before I could blink twice, all the literature was out my hand and people were asking for more. So it shows that the people want it. We're just having to figure out how to organize and pull the ego out of things. And until we can really pull the ego out of this stuff, we're gonna be like butting heads all the time. And that's why for me, like I can say what I have to say and then I can step back. Because for me,
Right.
I have a lot of youth mentors, and that's something we need. I have a whole gang of guys and some girls who they're all younger than me, and I sit down, put my feet up, and I listen. I don't say a word. Like my son, I feel so honored and feel so fortunate when he's around me and we're like working on computer stuff and he's like, "Oh dad, you don't do it that way anymore. This is how you do it. Bam, bam, two buttons up, it's done." And I feel
Yeah.
like, wow, like I feel successful because they say like real success is when your children, hey, we're coming home for Christmas. We can't wait to see
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, man.
Because if you
Yeah.
think about it, that's the real success. Like, because money and all this stuff falls away. But if you don't have these like love connections and deep connections with your children and your family, your life is, you feel empty. I don't care what nobody says.
And I gotta tell you, because a lot of times, like you can be so successful money wise that you can make the most money. And I'm telling you, if people don't believe what I'm saying, you just gotta take a trip down to the
Yeah.
hospital.
Yeah.
All right, you take a trip to the hospital or take a trip to the old people's homes, and as much and how successful they are, they're alone on that bed, sitting down with a lot of money in the bank account, with the people who are looking after them taking that money every week, the rent being paid every month or
Yep.
whatever, and yet nobody's coming to see
Right.
them, and that's how lonely
Right.
they are. You know what I mean? So, like to what you're saying, exactly, you're absolutely
You
correct.
know, I was listening to One Giant Leap, it's called, and it's about these two gentlemen who went all around the world and they talked about life and death and love and sex and spirituality and they touched on everything. And on the soundtrack, there's a clip where I think it's Mr. Rogers, where he says there was this group of people. They went around to all these different people all over that they were getting ready to transition to the next realm. And it didn't matter if they had whatever they wanted in their life or they had nothing. They all said the same exact thing. They wish they had traveled more. They wish they had stayed with their in connection with their childhood friends. They wish they had shared love more, and they wish they had traveled around the world and helped people. Not one person said they wish they had worked harder. Not one, and it didn't matter.
That's amazing.